Andrew, welcome. Can you all hear us okay?
Yes, thank you.
Terrific. I don't know if we want to give Eric a second to come in, otherwise.
Well, let's ask Miles. Let's ask Miles if Eric's gonna. So therefore, he's 4 or 5 hours ahead. So
Okay.
He said he wasn't coming.
I mean, either way, Miles represents Redstone. So
Okay.
Did you guys hear about a tree that caught fire yesterday on Sharon Drive, struck by lightning?
Oh, yes, sir. Had a bunch of buildings got struck.
Well, why don't we get started? Thanks everybody for making time for this meeting this morning. This is our first ever project review committee meeting for a permit review under Williston's newly adopted form-based code. So just as a very brief overview, the form-based code is structured in such a way that the permit for a major site development such as this can be handled administratively. That's true for all elements of the project with the exception of subdivision. If there is a subdivision involved, the creation of a new lot does still have to be approved by the DRB. That is the case in this project. There is a subdivision proposed to create a lot around the proposed hotel and parking area. That is under review by the DRB this evening. And so one of the caveats in my write-up of this review is that you know, some of the conformance with the form-based code is contingent on that subdivision being approved and finalized. And I'll go into that a little bit. So this is AP 23-0188 Finney Hotel 2 LLC, requesting a certificate of conformity for a 115-room, 4-story hotel at the corner of Market Street and Holland Lane, entirely within the Finney Crossing mixed-use development. So we have completed on the planning and zoning side a complete review of this project under the Williston Unified Development Bylaw, as well as Appendix F, the form-based code. There has been, since the submission in April, a couple of revisions based on needing to comply with certain elements of that code. We've taken the application through a 80-page long checklist, looking at all of the various elements of the project that need to meet the code. Within the application package that's in front of the committee today, I've prepared an updated version of that checklist where I've added initials to any boxes where I had not initialed before, indicating that the issue in the comment has been resolved. So in terms of this project's compliance with the town's form-based code, we find that it is approvable under that code. There are a couple places where the project relies on vested rights related to the Finney Crossing approval, and I'll go over those separately. Most of our review in this case is either architectural or based on the placement or creation of a couple of different site elements. So things like what the building looks like, what percentage of windows are on the street facing sides of the building, how the building is broken up into different what are called facade compositions. In other words, different looking parts of the building along its length on the streets. Use of approved materials, use of a pitched roof configuration, and where there's a flat facade or less of a pitched roof, the addition of a parapet or overhang to those elements. So I won't sort of bore everybody in this room with all of that architectural review, except to say that we found the building to be in compliance with that. This building is also subject to Williston's building form standards under the form-based code. This generally means that the building needs to be brought up to a line 5 to 7 feet back from the street right of way. The building is almost entirely in compliance with that requirement. It is one of the places where I'm relying a little bit on vested rights of Finney Crossing, the fact that Holland Lane and Market Street are already in place. There's a few spots where the building does not touch the required building line with the 60-foot interval that would be prescribed by the code. Holland Lane is essentially curvy in a way that makes that more difficult for the applicant to do. The other vested right I'm looking at is this building is part of a block in Finney Crossing that relies on a shared parking arrangement with the residential and other future uses on the project. It's all been master planned. And because of the configuration of that and the access, the requirement under the form-based code that the project provide a certain size private open area is being met in terms of the size of that area on the plan, but some of it is forward of the 30-foot parking setback in order to fit everything in. And so I'm recommending that be allowed because we are adapting out of an existing approved and live approval master plan. The applicant is asking for 50 feet of frontage designation flexibility along Holland Lane. So in this zoning district under the form-based code, the zoning you're subject to is dependent on the street that your lot is fronting on. And without that flexibility, there would actually be a boundary between two different sub-districts of the form-based code on Holland Lane across the front of the building. Those boundaries are allowed to be moved by up to 50 feet. The applicant has requested that such that the entire building is within the town center frontage and building form standard. That's allowed just upon request. So that's in play here. So where we're at and the purpose of this meeting is that we have a permit submitted. The next step is really to work everything out that needs to be in place for that permit to be approved and for the applicant to build. So we've received plans sufficient to approve from a zoning perspective. We have all of our fees. We have draft legal documents, including development agreement, guarantees for performance on public and private improvements, et cetera. All of the things that you might see in a more typical review coming in as part of final plans after a DRB approval. So from the zoning side, we are generally ready to go on this permit. But the purpose of this meeting is to lay out for the applicant and the town staff what more needs to be done, particularly for public works and fire to be ready to sign off and give us the green light to issue that permit. So we've seen a little bit of preliminary conversation, I think, with both departments, some requests for detail from fire around location of sprinkler room, FBCs, et cetera. I'll let Chief Collette speak to that and what more is needed. Similarly with public works, whatever needs to happen here. What I would like to suggest in this new process, which thank you for your patience, we're on our very first one and we're still developing it, is that the conversation today leads us to the submission of what we would normally call a final plan set. A set that will live with the permit, that will be governed by the permit. It's the set we would look at when we go to inspect for a certificate of occupancy at the end of the day. And the conversation is really with our commenting departments at this point, what all needs to happen on that final plan set or supporting information to make this project ready for a permit to go out the door from the town. The last thing on my list from zoning is that the subdivision needs to be finalized. Other than that, we're all set. But Chief Collette and Public Works Director Bruce Hoare need to be satisfied with the usual things they're looking for a new building as well. So that's my introduction. We can just have a conversation. Doesn't have to be a long one. That's what I'm trying to work towards.
Can I just hop in quickly? Eric is texting me saying that he can't get in from out of country to the Zoom because of a setting.
You can't change it.
I might be able to change it.
You can't. Eric said it. We tried the other day. Even Aaron couldn't change it. Eric's got to change it.
Okay, well, I'll just let him know that.
I've done it before in a live meeting, so let me see if it'll work.
Okay.
Good news, you can't. We just tried. We couldn't do it.
Yeah, I know.
If someone's in it.
Are you using the
What
town?
country is he in?
He is in Norway.
Why the hell are we here? Let's go. I'm in.
Oh, are you?
That's my guess.
See,
Have to watch, it was a neat place. Very cool.
I'm dropping a Zoom link. Send him that Zoom link and see if he is able to get in.
All right, let's see here.
That's gonna be pretty good if you can, because
It's the same steps we went through. I don't know why it didn't take.
unless Eric was supposed to change it.
Yeah.
He's a musician, a magician.
Well, supposedly Aaron said that he changed the password even, so she couldn't even get into it.
Let's see.
We were trying to get somebody in from Russia, so. Even worse, yeah.
I hired the person, don't say that.
What position?
Stormwater coordinator,
Got it.
so Christine doesn't have to fill 2 roles anymore.
Yeah.
Someone from Russia.
How easy
That's
that
how
is.
rumors get started, right?
Yeah, it's not, I
Not
can't,
working.
can't text this link. Dave, can you copy that link?
What's his email address? I should have it, right?
Yeah, let me just. So it is E Hoekstra, which is HOEKSTRA at redstonevt.com.
Design build. All 3 of them, other than mine, was with Winston, but the other.
Oh, okay, so the only way I could do it is if I end the meeting and change the setting and then we all rejoin. I was able to change it in the overall settings, but in the one for just this meeting, I can't edit while the meeting is live. Although I was able to do that before for the Glazer thing, so.
Okay, Miles, what do you think? It's your call. Hello?
Yep, sorry.
You think we're okay to proceed with that, Eric?
Let's give him a minute.
Well, he can't get in without Emily ending the meeting.
We could leave the meeting, I could change the setting, and then we could all rejoin.
Yeah, if it's not too disruptive to do that.
Do we have anybody from the public attending
No one
right
from the
now?
public is
Okay.
attending right now.
Why don't we do that, real quick?
Okay.
And maybe.
All right, we should be back. And we are recording.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome, Eric. Glad we could get you in.
Thanks for making it happen.
Sure. So I'll spare you a repeat of my introduction, which was mostly to state that we've found this project to be in compliance and or approvable under a combination of the form-based code and some vested rights related to the Finney Crossing overall approval. The purpose of this meeting is to get the discussion going with our 2 main commenting departments, Public Works and Fire, to talk over what further details might be needed in the plan set. The goal would be to generate a final plan set that we can attach to the permit application that would be ready for approval and to clean up any other things that need to happen so that a permit can be issued. And as I mentioned to folks, the subdivision that the project is partially dependent on for its approval is under review by the Development Review Board tonight. So we do know that that subdivision needs to be approved and finalized in order for the project to fully comply with the code. So we were just getting ready to start talking about what remains to be done between Public Works and Fire, so we can get those conversations started and get ourselves to the point of having a final plan set that can function for approval. So that's where we're at.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So this is about the outside of the building, the site plan, and then there's also going to be we're going to be submitting, or Redstone and LPG will be submitting a vertical construction permit application.
Mm-hmm.
And that will, right, we have to come in for an administrative permit for the vertical building, correct?
So
And we're also going to be getting, or they will be getting a permit from the Department of Fire Safety for their approval as well. So we're talking about site stuff and outside stuff.
So the permit that's been submitted, that was submitted to us in April,
Mhm.
is the permit we will issue for both the site and building construction to happen.
Okay,
So that is the permit for everything. It came in April. It's been sitting incomplete. It remains incomplete until we complete this process. Both this meeting and any follow-ups that need to happen between applicant and town staff, as well as the completion of that subdivision. And then it's one permit and the project will be allowed to go forward under that. So
okay,
we're really trying to button up every single thing about this project prior to issuing a permit.
got it. Okay, just wanted to understand what,
But I think one of the things, in addition to addressing whatever comments Public Works and Fire has, is the timing of the issuance of the administrative permit and submission or purchasing wastewater allocation. You know, the application fees that come with fairly large checks,
Mhm.
purchasing wastewater allocation, executing the development agreement with the surety in place for the public improvements and the hybrid improvements, the wastewater connection application, the water connection application, the right-of-way, the permit for work within the right-of-way.
Mhm.
How does the administrative permit get issued such that they can get financing
Mhm.
and move forward? But, or can the administrative permit be issued with a condition or contingent upon those other things being done at a later date when the funds are available to cover all those checks
Mhm.
that go along with those, with the development agreement, the purchase of the wastewater allocation, the water connection, the wastewater connection?
Our fees are all due when you get a Z card from them to start building.
Right, so is there, I think at one point you had talked about, is there an administrative or a letter that indicates approval, and then the administrative permit is actually issued when final plans and all of these other things are done, but the administrative or the letter of approval gets them from where we are now past the closing to the point where all of those checks and applications are submitted and construction actually starts within a 10-day period or a 5-day period or something like that.
So I guess I'll answer your question with a question, then we can go from there. In our more usual DRB review process, would you utilize the notice of decision from the DRB as the instrument that would allow you to move forward?
yes.
Okay, so what I can do is I can write a letter attaching notes from this meeting stating essentially that the project review meeting has been held. The following outstanding items need to be completed for a permit to be issued, but the project has been found to be in compliance with the zoning and is approvable if those things happen. So it'll be like a notice of decision letter. It'll essentially be a zoning administrator's opinion letter saying this is where we are in the process, and yes, this project conforms and can move forward. The following things are required in order for that to happen: submission of a final plan set, execution of development agreement, fees where they need to go, et cetera, et cetera. So we can work together to come up with a letter that summarizes that, very similar to a DRB NOD letter.
That'd be good.
Okay, great. So I do know the applicant's been in conversation with Deputy Chief Gary, who's not available today. Thanks to Chief Collette for coming and filling in on that. And I think, Andy, you had responded back with sort of a highlighted plan, trying to start to work out some of that detail. I would expect that conversation to continue. I'm not sure if there's anything that's come up that is going to push the plan in a really different direction than it already is, but maybe you can address that.
So while there are floor plans, there's not mechanical designs, the interior of the building, the design, while the layout may be finalized, the design of all the mechanical systems, the structural drawings, all of that is yet to be done. OPG will be advancing those in the coming weeks. But what we were trying to do was to capture the items that were in the fire safety standards, put them on the floor plans, and at least continue that conversation with the fire department prior to those final construction drawings being prepared. OPG can provide those to the fire department at the same time that they would provide them to the state Division of Fire Safety for review.
Yeah, that'd be great. Great. And I think some of the other things that you already addressed, right, with the deputy were the, at least hallway windows opening, but when I look at the design right now, you already have functional windows in the rooms.
Right, I think
Right.
most of the windows, there's at least one element that's functional, it's
Yeah.
operable.
Right. So, and then the standpipe location, well, we were just looking for that drawing which you provided to us, the Tim last week, right?
Yep. One in each stairwell at each end of the building.
Yeah, I mean, if there was any flexibility, we'd love to see that fire department connection towards that main entrance. But understand that there may be limitations of where you could put that mechanical room, so with that hydrant that you're putting outside of the circle, the traffic circle out front, that because of the staffing issue, we just don't have another fire truck to connect to that. We don't ever have staffing to allow that to happen. So the truck that parks out front is the truck that's gonna supply that. So I don't know if that's an option.
I'm not following, so move the stand.
So the
to the
standpipe,
lobby.
the fire department connection is on the hall and lane side of the building, is that right? As I
Right.
understand it, right, and the hydrant's there, you're proposing to put a hydrant just off of that center circle.
So you're saying put the fire department connection
If
near the
it's-
lobby entrance of
Yeah,
the
if
building.
there's a way to put it over there, if OPG hasn't worked that out yet, we would enjoy that a little, it'd be, make it easier for us operationally, because that'll come with a delay for us to connect to it. But if that's something that's not gonna work out, then we'll just have to deal with it. As long as it's within that, as close as it is to that hydrant and the road, it makes it easier for us, for sure. But if there was an option for us to put it on that inside corner, that would be preferred.
We can certainly look at that with them.
So, but, other than that, it's the traditional things that you've seen, from Lieutenant Prouty about keying of the fire alarm system to make sure it's all that uniform key, all that stuff. It's that boilerplate stuff. And, that you see in our fire safety plan review stuff. Certainly appreciate the addition of the second elevator. That does help us out a lot. And then the remote stairwells with the standpipes at both stairwells, has value.
Okay. How are we in terms of status as it relates to public works at this point?
Unless things have changed on this plan, we're all set. I mean, obviously, like you already talked about getting the permits, right away permit and all that good stuff. Construction inspections, while things are going on with public improvements.
Mhm.
Quite honestly, I wished I would have put that intersection back on you guys, but we're having that looked at right now. Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. They got into a four-way stop.
That would be a big.
And one of the genesis, one of the things behind that is the proximity of this hotel to that corner. Well, if you remember when this project, when you guys first built this, your engineer came in with it as a four-way intersection. I said, fine, show me the documentation. That should be a four-way intersection if you wouldn't do that. So,
Because it probably wasn't the volume
well, right.
at that time.
So, yeah, I mean, just because somebody doesn't, oh, that should be a four-way intersection, throw it on there. Well, you gotta show me that it's gonna. Anyway, we've got enough complaints. I don't think there's been as many accidents as people think there have, but there has been a lot of, I sat right in that restaurant at Railroad Main, watched it one night, and I was like, son of a bitch.
It's entertaining.
It's just because people are just, it has nothing to do with the internet. It's just the way people drive anymore. So anyway, we are looking at that, being turned into a four-way intersection at this point. And I suspect it'll come back from the Regional Planning Commission that it meets the warrants at this point to become a four-way intersection, especially with the addition of this hotel and that adding more pedestrian traffic. But other than that, no, I mean, we've been through the plans more than once, and appreciate the way you're moving the hydrants around to help the fire department out and everything better all the way around there. So, yeah, just a matter of dealing with the documents you already talked about that we need to see. Unless Christine knows something I don't.
On the development agreement, public improvements would include anything related to water and sewer. The sidewalk within the right of way.
Water, sewer, stormwater,
So all stormwater, all
anything you're connecting, if you're connecting to wires,
within the right of way, but the catch basin and piping on the
it's
lot
private.
is private. Street trees,
Putting in more trees.
there
is a landscaping set, yeah. And then Andy, private improvements is gonna be in any interior landscaping, walkways, the development of that private open area with any of those elements. Am I missing anything else that we would consider a required private improvement here?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
what walkways would be, I mean, all walkways or the connections?
I think the connections, and I forget, do you have a walkway down that? You don't have a walkway down that island in the parking lot. That's a landscape island, right?
There's.
Oh, there's a
sidewalk.
walkway, sorry.
Right, so I
Yes,
guess I was assuming it would be
Yeah.
this and then
and then
this.
the pedestrian way coming in off Market. Yep.
And then like any benches or the trash receptacles at the street corner, that would be private.
Yeah. I think, Andy, probably there should be a line in there for the street wall. Because the project doesn't conform unless the street wall is constructed. So that would be a new thing. That should just be a line in the required private improvements as well.
I do have one question, and looking at this, what is this? This is our right of way, the solid line is part of our right of way?
Yep,
Okay,
so this is a little raised terrace that's outside of the right of way,
okay.
leading into a primary entrance to the building on the corner.
Oh, it's outside the right of way, and this is.
Bike racks,
That's what I thought.
Is there room for those bike racks? When you park a bike in them, they won't interfere with the sidewalk? I think there is, but
And it's hard to tell from a plan like that.
but we can check to make sure that there's is it, I can't remember whether it's Williston or South Burlington, but I know there's a standard on the length.
I don't recall if we have one, but it, with that inverted U standard rack or the ring and post rack, basically the bicycle's hitting that rack right about the middle, so there's about as much of
The
it on either
landscaping
side.
plan does show
Okay,
spec bikes.
you might have room to kick that over just a little bit.
Yeah, we just as soon not have those bikes sticking into the right of way. They're gonna be in a bad enough shape if they're out there in the winter time anyway.
that plow.
When we go by with a plow, and we're plowing all sidewalks now, so.
Sidewalks.
Public sidewalks.
So Andy,
They work right up on that one, Chris.
we might also look at the number of required bicycle spaces that come with the building. And as much as I hate to reduce the number of racks, if that was part of the solution to keep that, especially that one that's really intruding on the right of way, we could entertain that on the final plan set as well.
Well, there
I know
were
you've got-
three
you've got
over
other-
here that have been on the plan, and then they were off the plan, and then they were back on the plan. So without these over here, we've got the 18 that are needed.
Okay,
I mean, I guess that's another option if, you know, if we eliminated one here, I mean, these could certainly be pushed forward a little bit, but if we eliminated one or two and added them back over here, we can
Okay.
keep
We would like
we
that.
can keep the 18, but shift them around a little bit so that they're outside of the right way.
I mean, they're not, obviously not gonna be a problem for us, when we, you know, they're not gonna stop a plow, or anything. I just don't want to be hearing we damage something.
Yeah.
I would expect a lot of the usage would come from people either working or staying at the hotel here, and they would probably want to be parked behind the building anyway. So, you know, in a more retail environment, it's nice to have them out where they're visible on the street, but it's probably not as big a concern here, getting them around the other side. Great. From the applicant side, are there any other questions that we should answer in this room today? I've kind of sped through the architectural review. We did have an updated color scheme that I don't think probably anybody here is concerned with at all. In fact, the code itself doesn't say a whole lot about color. As far as I can tell, the architectural arrangement on the facades has been consistent since before that change in color and material. I think everything complies. But if there's anything else we need to address that would show up in the final plan set now, let me know. And we can go from there. I haven't seen the 3D rendering yet, so that's nice to see as well.
Has this been emailed to us or no?
It hasn't. I think the intent is for it to be sort of a informational document as opposed to an exhibit.
Okay.
Just because the colors on the rendering versus the elevations versus, you know, color samples are always, there's always that little bit of variation, so we'd be happy to email it.
Great.
Yeah, that would be a good one to use for any outreach.
Okay. Well, it's not necessary that this meeting run any longer than it has to. I want to thank everybody for attending and participating in this review. And again, thanks for your patience as we work out this new review process. I will work with our commenting departments to draft a notice of the result of this meeting and a list of what are the outstanding items that need to happen, with a request that all of those be addressed and that we have a final plan set that will become the permit plan set. Applicant, I would expect you to sort of circulate that with Public Works and Fire, similar to the way you circulate final plans, and just make sure that everybody is nodding heads on all of that before it comes back here for issuance. And I'll be checking back in before anything goes out the door with everybody, of course. But we found this review very, very detailed, very productive. Thanks to our consultants' development of a very, very lengthy application review checklist on our end. And thanks to the applicant for being responsive to it and pointing out some places where we needed a little clarification. It's really helped us learn our process that much better for the next one. And hopefully we can proceed efficiently with this one. With that, I think we can conclude the meeting. Thanks, Eric, for joining from far, far away. I hope it's nice there. It looks nicer than here.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for making the technology work.
Sure.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Andrew.
Bye.
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 Move on with our lives.
So he will probably also try to join the DRB hearing tonight.